base or something. Do you want to do a visual? Because I have a, go to HDAR, do a listing site, and you can show.
Yeah, so today we're talking about both MLSs. We have the High Desert Board and we have the, oops, CRMLS, okay? So let me go back to the High Desert. So you want to look at the listings?
Yeah, just go to the listing locator, and I'm going to give you a listing.
Oh,
Listing
okay,
locator.
yeah, that's fine.
And put in SR,
Okay,
1928
uh-huh,
5252. And this is what you'll get.
right,
Because
so,
it's SR, and SR is the one that does.
so now let's try it in the CRMLS.
It's one of the private associations. We've already put
Listing
the
ID.
for that house. Yeah. There's a way to find it. You go Google it and you'll find
So
it.
there it is there, it's on 58th Street West, okay, and it's in Lucerne. So, so SR, yeah, so being a private board, so any private board will not show up in our High Desert board, okay? All right, now, one of the other differences I like about the CRMLS versus the High Desert is, so if you go to, let's say you go to whatever, residential, okay? And you're gonna go to, boy, this thing is terrible. Let's say you go detail, and you want to just look up, let's do a map search really quick. I just want to show you guys something. So I'm going to go to the High Desert, and I'm going to do my house. Since we are on YouTube right now, I don't want to pull up anybody's private information, so I'll do my own because it's mine and I can do what I want with mine. So let's say you're looking for, sorry guys. Let's say you are looking for lot dimensions, okay? On title, sometimes when you look at the lot dimensions or the plot map, it will not show you your lot dimensions, okay? So for example, if you look at this property, okay, first of all, it gives you all the owner information. It gives you last sold, okay, 4 bedroom, 3 bath, 2,900 square feet, right? But right here, not only will it give you tax information, but right here will actually give you lot dimensions. So it'll actually give you recorded lot dimensions for any property. And I love that because I've had people that will, will tell me, I need the lot dimensions for this property, whether it's a builder or whatever, and I, don't know. But now on here, this is great because you can actually put it into your listing now, okay? You always, I still would put buyer to verify, but let's say you want to look at like one of these. Okay, so watch, look at the lot dimensions. You see the lot dimensions? So it gives you the lot dimensions of that property, which I think is great.
In order to access this, you need to be a member of CRMLS or just do it through the...
This is through the CRMLS, whether you're with East Valley or whoever, but that's who that's through. So I think that's a huge, just powerful tool to use. And I think that's also why I have both still, because I can still come here and use it, even though I still pay $400 a year.
Financial question, what's the cost for the dues at CRMLS?
To join the board or just for MLS?
Well,
I think East Valley is $105 a quarter or $108 a quarter, I think now.
just for the MLS?
Just MLS if you belong here in the High Desert. Right. But to join, the fees are about the same. It's whatever the $500 or $600, whatever that fee is. They're about the same.
If I belong here like I do, I could, for like 105.
Then you can have both, yeah, like I do. I pay the board up here.
Per quarter?
Per quarter, yeah, per quarter. So that's the thing on here, right? So I'm going to get into the listing portion. So let's say, for example, you got the listing or you're at a listing appointment. So this is a Listings 101 class for those that are viewing online. Title will be changed later on the video, but for the portion of this, we're just going to go to the California Association of Realtors, and I'm going to cover the contracts. Yes, my username is Gelato. Okay, that's an old nickname. So on here, what we're going to do is we're going to log in, and I'm just going to start a brand new transaction. I'm not, again, just for the purpose of privacy, I'm not going to go into my file. So we're going to start a brand new transaction here. So for those that are new, if you have not seen this yet, and this is your first time, this is how you start your listing transaction. Zip Forms has changed in the past several years. It used to be a different look. There's what they call a classic look, and now this is the new look. So if you haven't been on Zip Forms for a while and you haven't seen it, this is the new version of it. You used to be able to switch dashboards to go between classic, and I don't think you can do that now. No, I don't. Yeah, you used to have like a classic view on here, but all right. So you're going to go to new, and you're going to go to new listing, new purchase if you have a buyer, new lease if you're doing leases. Sarah and Monica know all about this. Lease listing, you have that, or a quick sign. So for this class, we're just going to go to new listing. This is how I do my listings, okay? So I'm going to do my own. So I'm just going to call this test my own. And then what I do is, so typically here I put the last name, and then I'll go dash, and I'll go 11249 Bridal Lane, Victorville. Okay. So I'm putting in my own address, and then I pick residential. Again, down here you want to be very careful to pick what you're listing. So if you're listing a vacant land, of course you want to pick vacant land. Okay, farm and ranch, you can do farm and ranch. Manufactured home, this is very important because no one out there, or not no one, I apologize. There's a lot of people out there that will pick the incorrect file type, and then when you're going in to do your disclosures, you get confused. So you want to categorize it, okay?
Question.
Yes.
When you're doing, go back because now I'm lost. When you are creating your listings and you're starting off right there, if you have land and on the tax record it says building square footage, do you do it as a residential or should you do it?
If there's no building on the parcel, I will not do it as residential. I will do it as vacant land.
If there is a building, even though it needs to be torn down, it's residential.
If there is a building and it's dilapidated enough to where there is no value to the building, if it's a tear down, I will do it as vacant land, and then on the listing, I will market it as a tear down, and I will market it like if there's literally no value to the project and it's a tear down project, I will do it as vacant land if there's no value. Now, if there's value to the home, and let's say it's valued at, let's say it's 2,000 square feet, and you're like, well, we could sell it as is, and the bones of it are okay, and it's a good gut and remodel, then of course I'll do it as a residential sale. Yeah. All right. So on here you have your summary. You have your parties involved, you have your documents, checklists, and so on, okay? I do not do a cover sheet, okay? I never have and I never will, okay? So this is why these classes are important. Never have, never will, okay? Here's why. I'm just telling you why, okay? So I immediately go to documents, okay? I go to all forms. Now, this is where your listing agreement is very important because if you have land, you do not want to do a residential listing agreement. You want to go down to vacant land listing agreement. Your verbiage is different from one to the other, okay? Same thing for manufactured, yes. So for manufactured, you're going to go manufactured home listing agreement. Or excuse me, that's an addendum. Where's the listing agreement? Listing, addendum, purchase agreement, mobile home. This is it. So, It was there. Okay. So you want to make sure you do manufactured home listing agreement, okay? And the reason why is because it's going to ask you for the serial numbers on the manufactured home. It's going to ask you for all those questions. So for those of you that are new, those are different from one to the other, okay? So in this case, we're just going to go with a standard residential listing agreement to make it easy. Now, here's why I don't use a cover sheet. What I like to do is I like to ensure that all of my placement of names and everything is in the correct place. And then from there, I adjust my cover sheet if I need to later. Okay, so for this case, we're gonna go over them briefly. We're not gonna read them sentence by sentence, but you have your disclosure regarding agency relationship. Okay, your agency relationship for those that are new is establishing your relationship between seller and agent or buyer and agent, so on and so forth. This is going to be on your purchase agreement as well as your listing agreement, okay? This document does have, I'll show you, a buyer signature or a seller signature depending on who you're representing, okay? So if you notice, the seller boxes or landlord boxes are able to be checked because this is on a listing agreement, okay? Now, tenant and buyer will be on your purchase agreement. It's the same exact document, the only difference is who's being represented on which document, okay? this talks about seller representation, seller and buyer responsibilities, agent representing both buyer and seller, buyer's agent and seller's agent. So essentially, this is giving the client an advisory, letting them know who the buyer's agent is, who the seller's agent is, and so on, and what happens if you represent both parties. Okay? If you're representing both the buyer and the seller, the client needs to know that you have fiduciary responsibility to protect that seller, but you also have fiduciary responsibility to protect your buyer. Okay? The important thing with that is knowing where the fine line is and when you're crossing it. Okay? You have to be very careful about dual representation because it can be damaging if you're not careful on how you're treating your clients or how you're representing your clients. Okay? So that's very important to know. Okay? We are going to do a transaction 101 where we're going to go over documents, so just so you guys know.
Can I interrupt you again?
You can. What's your question?
I find it best to, on that part right there, to explain it to the client.
Where it says dual agency?
Yeah, the dual agency is that I tell them, I go, in other words, if the buyer is willing to go up to this price, I don't tell you. And if you're willing to go down to this price, I won't tell them.
Yeah, you have to be, you also,
What I put on that paper is going to be from them, not me. I want you to know that.
you have to also be very careful when it comes to that language because you want to make sure that when you're explaining that, this is how I tell them. I go, look, if I bring you a buyer, okay, I have fiduciary responsibility to protect that buyer as well as protecting you. However, I will not disclose information about that buyer to you, nor will I disclose information about you to that buyer that can harm or infringe on me protecting your best interest. If you say it that way, it's a very vague or straightforward statement, but you're not saying, hey, because you want to be very careful about that kind of thing. Just so you guys know, on dual agency, it says if seller is represented by broker, seller acknowledges that broker may represent prospective buyers all of seller's property and consents. Okay, that's very important to broker acting as a dual agent for both seller and buyer in that transaction. Okay, so that's one thing you want to make sure they understand. Like you're aware of that. Okay, you're aware that I may represent both you and the buyer. So I'm just going to fill it out with test buyer or test seller. Okay, so just so you guys see my cover sheet later. Okay, I'm going to put the license number. I'll just do it, 019863372. Okay, so, and for those of you that go by a nickname, I have to change this to my legal name because my license does not say John, so I have to be very careful with that. And I do change that every single time. It does not say gelato. So,
What's your real name, John?
for another class, that's for another class. We'll go letter by letter in the next class, okay? All right, so on here you can see the next one is going to be your wire fraud and electronic funds transfer advisory. So this is very important. Now this is an advisory for those of you again that are new. This is new, a new document. So I don't know if you guys have all seen it yet, but if you have not, this advises the client that there's a lot of wire fraud going around, and in order for you to wire funds, they recommend that it comes from a secure email. And so as you can see down at the bottom, it says you're advised to obtain phone numbers and account numbers only from escrow officers that you are working with from the beginning of the transaction. Do not ever wire or electronically transfer funds prior to calling to confirm the transfer instructions. Only use a phone number you were provided previously, because what they'll do, they will copy the email from the escrow company, and the phone number will be different, and they'll have someone answer the phone, or the link to the email will be like a hacking link, and that's how they will mess with you. So that's very important. So now, in this case, the test seller will sign it. The buyer will not sign this one because this is also in the purchase agreement. Okay, all these documents that are here are all in the list in the purchase agreement as well. So in the transaction, it is okay to have a separate document with the seller from the buyer. You can have two documents as long as they're both signed. It's executed for this particular document. Some you cannot, like escrow docs and stuff. Certain ones have to have it. So, all right. So the date prepared, we'll just put today. And let's just say the contract is going to begin on the 27th of January, and we'll just do a 90 days, and we'll just go March 31st, whatever. Okay. So the parcel number, let's just say, is this. Listing price, you know what, for sake of argument, let's say my house is worth $1.5 million. Okay. And let's just say that I am going to pay a full 6% commission. Okay. Now, compensation to broker, this, for those of you guys, this is seller agrees to pay the compensation for services of agency responsibility, either 6% or a fee. So if I'm like, no, man, I'm not going to pay you 6%, but I will pay out, you know, $20,000, okay, because this is a $1.5 million property. I'll pay out $20,000, okay? That's what I'll pay you if you bring me a buyer. Okay, if you agree to that, that's fine, considering 3% is way over 30 grand, okay? So the other thing I fill out is section 2, or item 2 of section A, and this says if within a specific amount of calendar days after the end of the listing period or any extension, or after any cancellation of of this agreement, unless otherwise agreed, seller enters into a contract to sell, convey, lease, or otherwise transfer the property, who physically, so if you give the seller a list of people who have physically entered the property, this says, or to whom the broker of any cooperating broker submitted to the seller a signed written offer to acquire, lease, or exchange the property. Seller, however, shall have no obligation to broker under paragraph 3A2 unless not later than the end of the listing agreement or any extension or cancellation, broker has given a written notice to names of such buyers. This is for your commission, okay? This is for your compensation. I typically will put 60 days. Sometimes I don't use it, depending on if I know if it's a pocket listing and I know it's going to sell, I won't do this. Some people put 120 days here. So this is very important to know. The next section is your cooperating broker. So let's say in this case,
So number 2 is saying, if the property doesn't sell, anybody that I've shown the property within the last 6 months, within the next 120 days. if they
depending on
come
your
back
extension.
And you sell the property to them, I'm still entitled to my commission.
Correct.
Okay.
Seller, so this one here for cooperating broker. So in this case, I'm like, you know what? I'm paying you 20 grand. So you are offering a percentage of your commission to the other side. Okay. It is not written that you have to give a half split down the middle on your commission. If you're a 6% commission and you want to give the other side 2, that's your choice. Okay. It's your choice to do so. If you does not matter. You don't have to do it 3 and 3. You don't. Or 5% and you want to go 3 and give 2, you can. That's your choice. It would behoove you to do so, to go split down the middle, because you don't want to offer someone less. I mean, you can, but again, you don't want to offer someone 2% and then you're making 3% for what? What are you doing different than the buyer's agent is doing, honestly? Other than taking pictures and showing the house or responding to text messages?
Well, technically, you're actually, if you have the listing side, you're actually doing more, because if you went out and actually found the listing, that's half the battle, especially according to
Sure.
their agents. Like they say, the listing is the goal of, now, not to agree with you, split it down the middle, or you want to be fair, but technically, if you're out doing the work.
Sure, you're marketing the property, you're advertising, you're spending money on that kind of thing. I understand that, yeah.
That itself is work, because most
Sure.
agents, the buyers are just, you're coming in.
And again, it's at your discretion, how you see fit is, so in this case, I'm going to split it, I'm going to give whoever brings me a buyer $10,000, which by the way, this is a ridiculous commission, because at $1.5 million, 10%, you're not, or excuse me, 1% is 15 grand. You're not going to go that low anyways. This is just for example purposes, okay? So let's say I'm being generous. I'll change this and I'll give
Land
them,
listings are good for that,
I'll give them 50 grand, okay?
right? Land listings.
Now as an agent, let's just say I want to just give 20 grand, okay? I'll keep 30 grand, all right?
Isn't that kind of like not a good idea to put a cash amount there, because what if it comes in lower? It's the 6% is of the selling
Yeah,
price.
and again, yes, of course,
locks it, right?
but it locks it in. Now, in this case, let's say I don't want to give 20 grand. He's offering $50,000, right? Well, okay, I can still change that and go 1.5% if I want. Okay.
Leases and land might have dollar amount, but people.
But in this case, so let's keep it traditional, okay?
Yeah,
Let's keep it traditional. Let's go 5%, and then let's go 2.5. So for this case, all right? But my point is you can change it. So to your question, on the next page, to your question is you have your multiple listing service. Broker is a participant subscriber of. So in this case, whoever you're going to list the MLS with is who you're going to list it with. So in this case, you can say HDAOR. Back in the day, I used to put both,
Right, me too.
HDAOR and CRMLS, because we weren't sharing data. But now I belong to the High Desert Board, so this is who I'm going to subscribe to and make your your listing visible to. Okay. Right above it, you'll notice there's a leased or not owned item or a liened item. This is for solar, propane, anything that is leased or not owned. You'll have the ability to put in here. So a lot of times, if they have a solar lease, you can put solar power system. And a lot of times up here, they'll have a propane tank. I don't, because I own the solar system. So it's a liened. No, it's not even liened actually. So
Propane?
no, I do not. So we're going to leave that unchecked. Okay. This explains what the MLS is to the client. Of course, you want to go over all of this. This is just for sake of the class. The other thing that's important to note here is on this page, which is page 4, you have photographs and internet advertising, keep safe and lockbox, and your sign, equal housing opportunity, and so on. This is important because photographs is you want to note that obviously not very rarely is someone going to say don't take photos of my home unless there's like a tenant involved. You know, if there's a tenant involved and they don't want photography in the home, then you're going to check mark it. They do not agree to photographs. Okay, but the most important thing too here is to note that let your client know that when people come into the home, like they're going to want to take photos or video of the home on their own device, on their cell phone, on their tablet, or whatever. I've had people tell me I do not want people to take pictures in my home. Like I've had people say that to me. I don't want people to take video of my home. So how do you combat that? I put it in the agent remarks. Please tell your clients not to take photos per seller, right? Or you can text the agent during the showing to say, hey, just so you know, my seller doesn't feel comfortable with people taking photos. You know, they have personal items, whatever, if it's occupied, right?
Suggest to put away.
Correct. Same thing with your lockbox and your sign. The seller has the ability to opt out of both of those. So if you are by appointment only and they do not want a lockbox, they can verbally tell you, but how can they trust you that you're not going to abide by that? So it is in the contract for you to elect not to have a lockbox. Same thing with a sign. Okay. You always want to make sure you stick to contract, no matter what it is. You want to stick to contract. Okay. Trust advisory is on here as well. So if this was in a trust, you would check mark this. It would add that document, which is important in the event that you have someone that has the home under a trust. That's very important there. Same thing with REO, short sale, all that on there as well. Mediation and arbitration, that's important because if you ever go into mediation, everyone is responsible for their own fees. This talks about your legal binding agreement. Again, you want to go over all of that as well. So once I do that and I sign it, okay, I'm going to save this really quick before I lose it. So, all right, let me do, yeah, so my email's in there. Now, so now if we go back, let me go to our summary. See?
What is up with the archive on that?
See how my everything's entered? Again, this is how I do it. You guys use a cover sheet, you can use your cover sheet. I'm not telling you not to use it, and I'm not telling you that it's not a good thing. I just don't. One best practice that I have is I always take my AVID with me, which is your visual inspection form. I take my TDS with me. Okay. And I take my SPQ with me. These are important, and I encourage you to do these every time you go on a listing agreement. Here's why. When you review a home during your listing presentation, you're essentially doing a visual inspection for the value, correct? So in this case, you can fill out your AVID there, which is the top one there, the agent visual inspection disclosure. The disclosure itself does state that you are in no way a home inspector, and you are not responsible for going in and out onto roofs, into attics. Agent will not move or look under or behind furniture and so on and so forth. So this is telling them like, look, this is just a visual inspection. If there's a hole in the wall in the entryway, I'm going to put hole in wall, okay? Because I'm noting that I'm visually seeing stuff. I don't go under, I mean, I've seen where agents go under kitchen sinks and look up and they see that there's leaks under there and staining. That's not my job.
But if you see it,
It's behind cabinet doors.
what if the door's open when you walk in?
That's a different
You saw the
story.
picture.
It's a different story.
You saw me.
But my point is, your job is not to go find stuff. That's the home inspector's job. Let them do that part of their job. And then you can handwrite it, handwrite everything and then have them sign it at the end. Have them sign it. And just say, you know what, I'm going to do this now for you. That way I get it out of the way. Your TDS and SPQ, if you feel comfortable staying there and having them do it in front of you, you can. Do not fill it out for them. That is a disclaimer. Because a lot of this here is you have no idea about. Now, if there's certain things you know of and they're like, oh, it's substances, materials, or products which may be an environmental hazard, this is all to the best of their knowledge. So they can put no to that. But again, you want the client to fill it out because when you're signing this, you have to sign it on the top and you have to sign it on the bottom. You're acknowledging that the client filled it out. If you fill it out for them without them being present, for example, and the seller then is asked a question about, let's say, a leak that was in the property that they repaired, but it's not in the description on one of the checkboxes, guess who's liable? You are. So you want to make sure they fill it out. If I can bring it back and have all three of the, or I'll have all four of them as a packet that I can turn into Paula, I will try my best to bring all four of them, or at least the top two, because the TDS and the SPQ for the questionnaires, I usually leave it, so if we don't have time, I'll ask the sellers to do it and email them to me. I've been pretty successful with it so far. That's one of my best practices. That way it's done and you don't have to worry about it. Yes.
On the Avid, if you go into a house and you see stuff needs to be done, do you do the Avid if she's going to have it done? Or do you wait? Is that Avid?
I do, your Avid, so this is,
File.
so again, this is where your gray line comes in. Your Avid is only there and should only be filled out at the time that you do it. So if you're taking it with you on your listing appointment and she has not done like new flooring, your Avid needs to say carpet needs cleaning or replacement. You cannot say client will replace carpet in 3 weeks. It's not part of your Avid.
Okay, so if you do the Avid after it's fixed?
You can. It depends. If you go on your listing appointment and you're just there to do your listing contract and you talk to your client, there's a couple things you can do, okay? What I do, if I don't take my Avid with me, I will write down notes for my Avid. And I still try to have my Avid done based on the time I listed it. Because it can be very skewed or very gray area if your listing is in January and your Avid is in March.
You're right.
See what I'm saying?
You can say it wasn't like that when
You want to, you want to try and be as transparent as you can, but you don't want to put, if it involves putting your license at risk, don't do it. That's what I believe, okay? Always stick to the contract. So that's your three that I have there, okay? So again, to the point of my cover sheet, it fills it in later. So there's my price. Now I can go back and change it. I can change this and be more realistic and go $349.9. Because if I was to list my house today, that's what I would do. Okay. Commission summary.
I know that 6% changes dramatically.
Of course.
That's actually probably about 20.
So like on my listing agreement, it still says, still says 5 and it still says 2.5, but my price has changed. Any questions on the contract?
So scroll down, go back to that page where scroll down, okay, the archive, what the heck is that? That's all new. Why, is that for us to put it in there after it's like fully executed or something?
You can.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, the stuff that's already been signed, because what you don't ultimately, like, for example, let me go to one of mine, hold on.
Do you see orders on them?
Let's go to something that has a lot of stuff in it. Hold on.
You weren't gonna do this.
What?
You weren't gonna expose this stuff.
I know. Well, okay, if you have, yeah, so,
Because I usually just keep it on another file and send it to Paula. I don't usually upload it after.
yeah, I don't use archives either. So here, I'll see if I have my parents in here still.
I mean, it
I'll
would be
use that one.
smart because then everything would be in one file on whatever computer. I'm
So here's the one for my parents' house when I helped them purchase their home. So like in here, see all these? So if I wanted to, now archive is not here because it wasn't here at the time, but in theory what I could do is I could select all this stuff and I can put it in archive and then start fresh. So let's say you have a new buyer. Let's say you had a buyer and you fall out of escrow. You can throw all the old buyer stuff in archive and you can start fresh with new
And now
documents.
do you a new document?
Well, I don't know if it gives you a fresh document. You may still have to change the buyer name or in your cover sheet. I'm assuming you can go back later
But
and
it'll
change
say
the
what you
buyer.
put in the archive won't change.
No, I would imagine not because you're archiving it and you're adding a new form at that point.
Because I do that, and then I just save it in a file.
So,
So when you go on a listing appointment, how long do you try to get the listing for?
okay, so the question was how long is my contract generally for my listing appointment? Generally, I try to do a 90-day contract. I used to do 6 months, but I've been able to sell, most of my listings sell in under 30 days or at the very most 60 days. So plus our average market, days on market right now is about 65 days. May have changed since the beginning of January, but I usually will do 90 days. Now, if the home needs a lot of work and it needs, some renovating and some cleanup and it's dilapidated and that kind of thing, then I'll do a 6-month contract and I'll explain that to them. And I'll say, look, normally I'll do a 90-day contract, but in this case, I think we need a little bit more. I've done 4 months, 5 months, I had a house, I did a 9-month contract once because they had to fully do an estate sale. They wanted it listed, but they didn't want to put it on the MLS or, the MLS yet for a certain amount of time. So what I did was I put it on and I put it on hold and the client said that was okay. And then, but it was a 9-month contract because we couldn't show for the first 90 days. It was crazy. But generally when a client says, oh, how long is your contract? What I'll tell them is I used to do 6-month contracts, but now I do 90 days because I believe I can sell your home in under that. So.
Because I went through that with this one, it was like I couldn't see it. She just wanted me to do the contract and then just say, well, just tell them they can't see it until a certain date. And I
Right.
go, well,
And
now
then
you're,
you get an extension, if you're gonna be a 60-day escrow and it took you 60 days to find the buyer, the average market time is 65 days and you have a 60-day escrow, it's 120 days, do you get an extension?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because what I'll tell the client is, you know what, we'll do a 90-day, and if for whatever reason it doesn't sell, we can always talk about an extension. I don't make it.
I would usually get a 6-month or a 4-month and just tell them because it's gonna cover through the escrow in case it falls out.
Yes, yeah, you can do that. It depends on the situation, I guess. It depends on the house, it depends on all of that. Because if you have a house that you feel is going to sell quickly, then, you could do a 30-day contract if you wanted to. And then you can just let them know, look, we're going to do a 30-day contract for the listing part of it. If we open escrow within the 30 days, I'll just need to extend it for the period of the escrow. And usually people are pretty understanding to that. They're not, they're not going to be opposed to that. So,
another
yeah.
Avid question. I've seen it done, and I know you can't change a contract after everybody signed it. But if you do an Avid, and let's say the sink is damaged, and they fix it,
Mhm.
can you put parentheses, repaired on, and then put the date in there even after it's signed?
Yeah, for example, what you could do is you could say, you could do your Avid and you can say, in the kitchen, for example, it'll say, let's say they're doing the repairs that day.
Mhm.
You could say, repairs done same day as Avid, kind of thing. Sink cracked, repairs being done same day as Avid. Or you could say, sink cracked, repairs to be done within 1 week. You could say that. But again, you want to be very clear about what you're doing on your Avid because you don't want to sway the information.
Would it be smart to have you, yourself, and your client initial it afterwards? Because
I wouldn't even do it.
bottom?
I wouldn't even write it. Because again, it's very clear that you're just doing a visual inspection. I don't take that more serious than just what it is on the contract. Because if I do, then I'm going to get on my hands and knees and look for stuff, and that's not my job.
Okay.
I'm going to let the buyer worry about that through the home inspection. Yeah. So the other thing with going back to the MLS, going back to the MLS, you want to be very clear also on your listings. So this is public knowledge, that's why I can go into them. So like if you go into your listing, you want to be clear about what's in your listing, okay? So for example, lot dimensions, I always put unknown, buyer to verify. I could go to the CRMLS and find them. For this one, I didn't do that. But you always want to be very transparent about what you know and what you don't know. And you want to be very clear about what you want your buyer to verify. So for example, if I go back to, let's go to pending. So like for Candlewick, this is in Spring Valley Lake. On here, so Spring Valley, like for the association, for example, Spring Valley Lake, there's the phone number. This is the amount they pay quarterly, buyer to verify, okay? Because things change, and sometimes your sellers will give you the wrong information. So you want to cover yourself. The other thing that I recommend is, if you guys aren't doing it already, you want to protect yourself by noting that all information is deemed reliable but not guaranteed. Buyer or agent to verify. That's what I do for residential. For land, what I do, and you have to be very careful and strategic about this, because if you're not, it can hurt you in the end, and I'll explain why. Let me go to my land. Let's go to land. So it was it further the back than that? I think it was this one.
On the tax up there, on the top,
Cobalt.
on that black bar,
Holly
it
Road.
says tax. You can get that information for the lot size on there. You don't use that?
You mean from the title app?
From that right there, it says tax.
Yes, because on tax, sometimes the lot line, you can't see it. Sometimes all you see is the plot map, and the numbers aren't actually there. So that's why for this one, if I wanted to go back and get the lot dimensions, I would go CRMLS and find them through what I was showing you guys, because that's going to be better for me. But so on here, I always put, so like this was a cannabis lot. So on here for vacant land, if you're ever listing one, I always put, of course, all information deemed reliable, not guaranteed. Agent holds no expressed opinions or warranty on use, services, including but not limited to zoning, utilities, and other pertinent matters. Buyer to perform their own due diligence. This is huge, because if you're doing that on, I'll send you guys a copy of it if you
I was
want.
just gonna write down the address. What is it?
Oh, it's expired now.
Well, I know, but it'll still be there.
Yeah, I'll give it to you in a second.
All right.
So my point with that is, if you're not careful about that, you're the agent. You're putting all the information out there. So, newer agents, protect yourself at all costs and protect your client at all costs. Because remember, your client will tell you things, but they're telling you that to the best of their knowledge. So are they right on what they're saying, or are they wrong? They're not the title rep. They're not, they don't know all of that stuff. So that's very important. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. Other than that, that's it for me. Any questions, comments, concerns, emotional outbursts?
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for coming. I'm glad to see you. That's awesome. Glad to see you here. Thank you everyone for watching. Hope this was useful. Have a great day.